Happy Thursday, friends, and welcome to this, another edition of our Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. I'm Neal, Wavra, your host. In the office this evening, a little bit of a different spot. Welcome to all those that are joining. Look forward to tasting with you. I know two of you are already into this wine and on the patio here at Field and Main. Perhaps you're the first two who are watching. You know who you are, the Kestenbaums. I'm not at all swayed by the wine that they had in their glass and the discussion we had prior to this going live. So I have not tainted or biased my opinion of the wine at all based on the experience that I had with them chatting about the wine that was in their glass as they enjoyed our picanha steak this evening and salmon. So full disclosure, right? All due honesty. Kevin is here with Candy. Hello. Trish, Andy, and Kathy are here. Seems to be a pretty pleasant wine, exciting wine to have as we turn into fall and then have this sort of Indian summer night that is 70 plus degrees and beautiful. All the cabanas are full with people sitting outside with the doors open, the windows open. It's a spectacular evening to be enjoying food and wine and community. So we'll do a little bit of wine and community here tonight with you. Matt and Ariel, good evening. Welcome from DC. How are you guys doing tonight? How was your week? Very cool. Jan and Bobby, how are you this evening? Excited to have you with us too. We are going to go through the grid and work our way through this particular wine tonight. I think we've sent this out before and I've referenced it before. We had a gentleman named Phil here last night who is head of marketing and wordsmithing, as his card reads, from Wine Folly, and so I thought I'd reference it again. But Wine Folly and these wonderful maps and these wonderful charts, Wine Folly began with maps and then grew into the media outlet that it is now. But this is a fantastic one that is the red wine boldness chart that we pulled off of Wine Folly, and it gives you a spectrum of lighter wines to more robust wines, or as they call it, lighter to bolder. And that's something we certainly look at when we're evaluating wine. And so this is something cool to look at and reference as we go through the course of the evening and taste. And there's a white wine equivalent too. It's not necessarily exhaustive, and Tony has found things for us to taste that are not on this list. So certainly there's a potential that you might find something that's not here, but it gives you an idea of what we're talking about when we're talking about robustness, lightness to robustness, textural quality. You've heard me refer to it many times in the context of milk, from skim milk, which is more in the lightness, to whole milk, which is more robust, with sort of 2% in the middle. So I have this sheet, and if we can always certainly try to make a copy of it available for those of you when you pick up wine. If you'd like to have a copy, we can certainly make one available for you. But you can also find it on winefolly.com. And shout out to Phil, who was here last night, enjoying dinner with a couple of Virginia winemakers as he made a tour through Virginia, or makes his tour through Virginia for the next couple nights and days to experience what is amazing about Virginia wine right now. And another shout out to all those of you who are just finishing up or in the last throes of what was a really huge crush of harvest. All the grapes came in at once, and in and around the two sort of storms that were punctuating the harvest. So all the best to you who are in the midst of that. We're thinking of you. Susan's here. Hello to you. Chris is here. And Kathleen and Matt, yes, are outside. I think Taylor just chimed in too that he's outside in the cabana with his family and maybe not playing along, but at least chiming in, which is great to see. Thank you guys. Shannon and Kathy are here playing from Illinois. That is my home state. So where in Illinois? As the rest kind of round out this evening's chatting group, tasting group, let's begin. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you taste? For this particular wine, Kathleen and Matt, I know you've already kind of assessed it. And John, as you're just joining, what do you see? What color spectrum does this wine have, and what is it offering? I think it's given us kind of a reddish color, right? A rubyish color, but there seems to be a little variation. It's a lighter red color, as Candy and Susan are pointing out. What about that rim variation? There's a little bit of a watery meniscus, but there's also kind of a slight tawny element. Maybe that's also being here in the office with these old floors, but what do you see as you're looking at this particular wine? Is there that little bit of browning where you are? I wouldn't say it's a super brown, but it's definitely got a little variation, which might indicate a touch of age, right? Might indicate a little bit of alcohol, but it is pretty light in color, so I'd be surprised if it has a heavy alcohol. Susan's saying that it has a little bit more of a leg profile or a tearing profile than she expected. And that, if I can put words in your mouth, Susan, that's expected because it is presenting on a lighter side of things, right? This is not a deep, dark, rich, brooding, purple-black kind of wine. This is on that ruby end of the thing with a little bit of that tawny quality. And because of that, and because you can definitely see through it, it doesn't present in a way you'd think that it would be very robust or heavy. And robustness and heaviness can come from alcohol. And I was reminded of the importance of that word can, that qualifier can, today as I was tasting some wines with a distributor called Plant Wines, and a gentleman named Shane, who actually I met in Chicago, so circling back to Illinois, back in my Chicago days. He worked for a distributor there called Cream. They had some wonderful wines at that point, and he was bringing me some wines today that were 9.5, 10, 10.5, 11, 12% that had body weight. We tasted a Petnat from the Dordogne that was made from Semillon. That was 10% alcohol and had texture and weight. So it's not always alcohol that gives you that. It can be skin extraction. It can be just the ripeness of that fruit in a way that sits. And he was referencing wines from Georgia, the state of, not the state of here, but the country of, excuse me, that were sitting in Quivery, that were sitting in those earthen crocks for a long period of time, for months on end, and they would come out at 11 or 12% alcohol, he said, but have a ton of body and real structure. And so it's not a perfect indicator, but in the world of blind tasting, the more legs, the more tears you see, the better indication that you might be dealing with a warmer climate, a warmer vintage, a varietal that has a bit of higher alcohol. So Stephen and Nicole are playing this evening. Welcome to you guys. And Susan asking the question that the Kestenbaums asked too, without necessarily knowing it, as they were in New York last week, they didn't play along, and they were wondering if this might be Gamay. And Susan's question, would Tony do Gamay 2 weeks in a row? Would he not? I don't think he would, but that would be us playing him and playing not the wine itself. So if we want to consider Gamay, let's consider Gamay. Let's put it in the mix. As you look at this chart, and I'll see if I can get it closer to you there, but Schiavia, Gamay, Pinot Noir are sort of in that light camp. And so if you say this is a light wine and you don't consider Gamay and Pinot Noir in particular, because I'm not sure we would be tasting Schiavia or how many times you get a chance to try that. I've had it maybe 1 or 2 times. Maybe. So I wouldn't know for sure the characteristics that define a Schiavia versus one that wouldn't. But Pinot Noir and Gamay should be something we think about. Maybe Sangiovese with that kind of tawny brown element. Is it showing an orangish cast? Has a strong cherry flavor that Chris is noting. Or perhaps Courtney's feeding Chris in the background. Kathy, you're in Springfield. Gotcha. Downstate relative to where I grew up. So a ubiquitous Simpsons Springfield. I don't think we've been in Springfield as a chatting group, so thank you for bringing us there with you. The cherry quality, is it a strong, pure cherry fruit? Is it a medicinal cherry fruit? Is it a candied cherry? Is it a dried cherry? Is it red cherry, black cherry? And what does all of that tell us? It might tell us a little bit more about where this could be coming from. We were talking, the Kestenbaums and I, that just the color alone sort of suggests that this would be more old world than new. It's not a guarantee, but it certainly suggests that we'd be in more the old world camp. And if we're talking about Pinot Noir and Gamay, there's greater opportunity for those two from a traditional sense to be made there, but certainly opportunity for other Gamays and other Pinot Noirs to be somewhere else. A red cooked cherry, so more of a cherry pie presentation perhaps. What else? Cherry being a prominent element of fruit, and we're looking for a few things: fruit, earth, and wood. Anything earthy? Anything wood oriented? Anything spiced in particular? Cooked and dried cherry. So there's a hmm, yeah, there's a bunch of cherry and a light color and a little bit of cinnamon, a touch of wood, a kiss of wood. Chris is noting a little bit of wood, and then Susan saying some cinnamon, and that could be an indication of a little bit of, say, European oak, French oak. I agree with that. There's kind of a nice cinnamon bark kind of profile. Anything earthen about this? Crushed stones, rocks, mineral, forest floor, humus, compost, manure, barnyard. Because it was sheeting the way it is, it's giving us some tear formation. The legs are kind of traveling and stay established. The tears kind of run and the legs stay established. And so this should be moderate alcohol, right? Which doesn't necessarily indicate one way or another cool climate or warm climate. Could be warmer vintage in cool climate. Could be a moderate vintage in a warmer climate. Not something that's necessarily clear. I wouldn't say this is super ripe. Like if this was Pinot Noir, just assume that this was Pinot Noir. I wouldn't be immediately rushing to guess that this was sort of Central Coast Pinot Noir. I think this would be not an inland kind of warmer Pinot Noir expression or a Russian River Valley Pinot Noir. Might be more Sonoma Coast, something coastal that would have an element like that. Since we're on Pinot Noir, where would we consider in the world? Where should we think about Pinot Noir? What are some of the places? I named a few in terms of California, right? So California all over from the coast, so from Sonoma Coast into Sonoma itself and up the valleys in the Russian River, and also in Napa, of course, and certainly in the southern part of Napa and Sonoma in the region called Carneros. You have the Central Coast area where you've got a bunch of that growing. Of course, if you go one state north to the Willamette Valley in Oregon, you can get quite a bit of Pinot. Not so much to speak of in Washington. There's examples, but not one that you would probably think about in the context of blind tasting. Burgundy, as Susan's noting, it doesn't seem Burgundy to her. Susan, maybe if you could elaborate for us, what does that mean to you? Why would this not be Burgundy? And while you're thinking about that, or while you're responding to that, you can get Pinot Noir from Austria. We have a lovely one from the Burgenland on our By the Glass list right now this week from Anton Bauer. The Austrians make Pinot Noir. The other regions of France make some Pinot Noir. You can get some from Champagne. You can get some from Alsace. You can find Pinot Noir grown in the northeastern part of Italy and in Slovenia. You can find it grown with some prominence in Australia and the southeastern part of Australia, and the Mornington Peninsula in particular. You can find some pretty cool Pinot Noirs, and in Tasmania. And then if you bounce over to New Zealand, you find Pinot Noir grown in New Zealand and in one of the furthest south growing areas in central Otago, for example. You find it in another very south spot in Patagonia and in Argentina. So you find it in Chile, and so you find it all over the world. And if this is in fact Pinot, and we can get to that point as we taste it and see if that's what we think, we'll have to try to start then narrowing it down. It's kind of like Chardonnay in that regard, where it's difficult because you have a lot of choices, a lot of options of where it is grown. Alsace for Sue. Chris is putting out Blaufränkisch. Jan's throwing out Germany. And I didn't mention Germany. Yes, of course, there's Pinot Noir in Germany. I skipped right over Germany going to Austria. And so let's taste this wine and see what the profile is. Is it high acid, low acid? Is it really robust in body? Is it lighter in body? And we certainly have kind of cued up the idea that it's going to be lighter in body just based on the appearance. And then, do we have a lot of tannin or a little tannin? And that will help us steer clear of certain varietals or add others into the mix. And then we'll talk about flavor and what flavors are there, and do they reference the aromas and the smells that we picked up on the wine. Is it dry or sweet? And dryness is perceived on the back end of the experience more than on the front end. So as it lingers on your palate, is there any residual sugar experience? Does it linger with a syrupiness, or does it linger with a sweet sucrose kind of quality to it? Not really. It's dry. It has a kiss of cherry, just lingers though. Low tannin. Yep, I agree. Chris, you're calling for some medium tannin. There's some them there for sure, and the acid kind of exacerbates it for me, so it is medium acidity. It's definitely dry. I think it's a lighter bodied wine, right? It's light to medium. It's flirting in the 2% realm. It's more skim milk than 2%. It's delightful. And it has that sort of cherry fruit quality, that with a softness to the wine, cherry and tart. Yeah, there's a soft cherry quality, and then I was just about to say, so Allison, you nailed it for me. There's this tart, refreshing element about it that really does reference Pinot Noir. I'm going to be hard pressed to go off of Pinot Noir. Now the question for me would be where in the world is this Pinot coming from? But Blaufränkisch, we might get a little bit more blue element and a little bit more texture and body. Susan, you're giving us a little dryness. Yep, medium acidity, medium ABV, so medium body. Got a medium finish. Yeah, it's a nice wine. It's not a prolonged, real complex profile. It's kind of all about that cherry. A little bit of that spice in the nose. Are you picking up anything else on the palate beyond the cherry? Pour myself a touch more. Let's see what changes are afoot. I'm about 2 to 4 minutes early on the big change that occurs in our 20 to 22 minute mark, but well, there is a change. Picking up a lot more earth. Susan's asking about Valpolicella. That's another light-bodied wine that could be made from a principally Corvina blend. I think that's worthy of consideration. Wow, there's definitely more of an earthy note coming through on the nose. It's more manure-y, a little funk, natural fermentation possibly. That's what Chris is noting. All cherry to Robert. Yeah, I hear you. If this was Burgundy, it's starting to kind of gain a little bit more textural weight. If it was Burgundy, I think we're talking about sort of a village and below kind of presentation. And I'm not sure we're talking about a really high-end Burgundy. So the reason I would say that would be that I'm not picking up layers of complexity and layers of flavor. The overall profile is a little bit lighter too. And so instead of it being a hillside with real concentration and lower yields, it might be a little bit more on the kind of general plane of a growing space. The vineyard giving you a little bit more easygoing, fresh kind of profile, and this sort of seems to have that. If it was not Burgundy, or if it is not Burgundy, then where else do we go? So, and are we convinced that it's Pinot Noir? Susan was throwing out Valpolicella. We were talking a little bit outside about Sangiovese with the Kessenbaums, potentially so Chianti, for example. Would it be that? Could it be a lighter expression of Grenache? And I'm not sure about that. So as we're doing this, we're of course always looking to try to break the world into pieces and rule out spaces. So is this old world or new world? And can we focus then on one place or another? If this is old world, then we're talking about Germany, Austria, France, maybe Italy, Slovenia, I suppose, but Europe. Are we talking about Europe or are we talking about Australia, Chile, Argentina, United States? I, of course, left out in my description of the United States that there is some pretty spectacular Pinot Noir grown at Ankita Ridge in Virginia. Love their wines. If you're listening, we need some more, and we can't get it right now. The distributor doesn't seem to have it. We'd love to have some more. Chris, you're saying you don't think Pinot? Okay, great. Where do you want to go? Susan's saying Barbera. Candy's saying doesn't taste Italian, seems like New World. So Candy, where would you place this in the New World? And Chris, you're saying Old World, not Pinot. So something else. Old World for David. If this were New World, it has an Old World element to it. It has that little tawny element, and it has, I don't know, it's that gut feeling. It's sort of just more Old World to me. Nicole is saying Old World. So yeah, I mean, I think like it's giving us a simplicity of expression, and I'm more in like the like sort of German Austrian camp of Pinot Noir, and I know that's not fully popular with everybody. That's fine. Pinot Noir is very good at expressing place, like Riesling is, like Chardonnay can be, but Chardonnay can also take on the winemaker's footprint much more so. Chris, you're thinking something more obscure. So obscure, yes, and I said that outside too with the Kestenbaums right before we got live. It could be something that is Pinot Noir, Gamay, straightforward, and we nail it, or it could be something that is totally obscure and that we are never going to get, but that's going to be a cool experience, and it's going to reference what we know about this. And so Chris likes Austria, Germany, Georgia. Adding a tiny vegetal note. Is anybody picking that up? Cooked, like stewed Brussels sprout. Kind of a cabbagey note. Is that because we talked about Germany and then I'm thinking about cooked cabbage? That's not fair. That's profiling, isn't it? That's what we're doing. Kathy, you're in the Old World too, so most of us seem to be heading in the Old World track. If Germany, what varietal? I think I'm still Pinot Noir, personally, but Blaufränkisch was put out there, right? Blauburgunder would be the equivalent of Pinot Noir in Germany. Chris, you're going to throw out Bobal as just another opportunity because we have had it once and it worked once. So Bobal, we'll put that down as, for the record, 1 vote for Bobal. And if by chance it is, you'll get all the credit. All the chips will go to you. Yeah, I think like the Nahe or the Rheinhessen, something like that, where you've got river influence, you've got some ripeness, but not a ton, and it's a moderate wine. It's moderate alcohol, moderate body, moderate acidity, low tannin, and sort of a Blauburgunder or Blau kind of noir blue Burgunder from Burgundy. So you're talking about Pinot Noir. Mm-hmm. Yeah. just the presentation of that cherry. It has a little bit of funk notes. It has a little bit of earthen notes. Um, Austria, sort of, as I noted earlier, that we have a really lovely, and it could be this. Like maybe we're pouring this by the glass right now, and I'm not referencing that. But Anton Bauer makes a really cool Pinot Noir from the Burgenland that is delicious and absolutely correct. And Kathy, your great question of like what makes German Pinot Noir, not having had one, it doesn't taste. It tastes more primary in the fruit category, generally speaking, and usually depending on where you're getting it in Germany, you need to have it get ripe enough to produce, but it always sort of has a fresh fruit. I shouldn't say it always. My experience with a limited number of them have a ripeness to them that's also met with a kind of a mineral freshness that keeps the wine in check. Simple-ish. I mean, they're not weak or lean or insipid. They're just delightful kind of Pinot Noirs that express in this sort of similar way to a Bourgogne Rouge, kind of a basic Burgundy, but without kind of that same structural component. And Olga, you think this heads further south than Germany, so northern Italy kind of a presentation, Slovenia, something like that? And are you still in the Pinot Noir camp like I've been beating that drum, or are you in a different camp? And Candy's going from Oregon to Germany. Screw top. I walked right past Oregon. I mean, David's asking about, does anything in this wine lead you to a cooler climate? No, it's not like cooler, straight cool. It's got some ripeness, but I don't think it's not a grape that is grown in a way that is looking to really push the weight and the structure. And so I think it's a wine that could be, generally speaking, in a more northern clime. I'm not picking up like, I don't think this is a Spanish red or a southern Italian red. It has ripish cherry fruit. Kathy, good evening to you. Welcome, the 11th hour. You're still always welcome, of course. A lighter bodied, medium minus kind of bodied, like skim milk to 2% kind of wine. Ooh, Olga, nice. I like that, where you're headed to. The Northern Italian blend camp, light Lugana, Bardolino. Yeah, something like that would be fun. We tried one of those a couple weeks ago. That was really tasty. So yeah, 100% in terms of that potential. So getting a little bit further south, but more north in Italy, for example, more south than Germany. That adds a little wrinkle to the consideration. I think I have to go. I've ventured away from my gut the last couple of times based on the group, and I've done well doing that, and I've done poorly doing that. A quick synopsis, Kathy, for sure. So we have tons and tons of cherry, low tannin, medium acid, medium minus body, medium finish. It is old worldish in profile. It has a ruby to kind of a slight tawny rim profile. It has leg formation, legs that stay and tiers that form quickly and run fast, but then the legs stay delineated. So moderate alcohol. It's kind of in the middle. It has cherry in the dried cherry camp to the fresh cherry to sort of the baked cherry, kind of cherry pie profile. The pie part is not so much the importance as it is the stewed kind of cherry, or just the baked fresh cherry. And then there's a bit of a funk element here. There's a manure-y element coming about. What else, folks? What am I missing? As our recap, most of us think more old world than new. Mm. Does this taste Italian? Remember we've talked about this multiple times in the past. Does this taste Italian? Yeah, it's moderate alcohol. It's not hot. There's no heat on the nose, and there's no heat on the back retronasal kind of quality. 12.5%. Yeah, I think that's about right. Maybe 13, but I'm more in the 12.5 camp, personally. I don't. This doesn't taste Italian to me, and we've talked about that before. Is having kind of this, maybe a little bit of volatile acidity, maybe this little bit of earthen element, this kind of wild acidity that's there. This doesn't have that. Frappato, another cool idea. Yeah, a lighter red, coming from further south. Lots of cherry. And Chris, you're noting too that like me, I'm just not getting the Italian tell. There's not this something about when you put your nose in a glass that's Italian. It just sort of happens, and I've been wrong before. Olga, you're helping by saying certainly if it's Italian, it's more northern, not southern, and you can't get much more south in the way of Frappato coming from sort of Sicily. Saint Laurent, we were throwing out Australian varietal, and it doesn't have. This has a more forgiving, open quality about the fruit. Chris is asking about Spätburgunder and Blaufränkisch. I don't know about Blaufränkisch for me. I don't think it has enough texture and weight. Spätburgunder, yeah. I mean, there's absolute possibility there. And Saint Laurent, it gives you. What is Saint Laurent? Saint Laurent is Pinot Noir and Zweigelt. Is that right? The cross between the two could be there, but there's always like this. I said sinewy, like the sinewy, austere element about Saint Laurent that isn't here. Austrian Pinot, yeah. I'm going back to Germany. I mean, for me, I think this is German Pinot. Northern Italy, Germany, Austria, we're kind of in this sort of realm of a red that is lighter in body, that has this slightly warm expression, so a warmer site, but in an area that we generally consider more cool. So it comes in ripish, but at more like 12 and a half, not 13 and a half or 14, right? And so and Ariel's in the West Coast. Well, Kevin is thinking Italy. Ariel, are you West Coast Oregon like Pinot? Are you something else, a different varietal? Nicole likes Italy, but not sure. Yeah, I mean the Pinot Nero. So Pinot Nero up in the Alto Adige, or even in the Veneto kind of northern parts of northeastern parts of Italy. Generally find a little bit more darkness to it and a little bit more richness, and black cherry. This is kind of parsing finite minute detail, and it's, I don't want to extrapolate that is exactly the profile of that area, because I've had variation there, but that's how I'm looking at it, going, if it's that, I'm not getting enough what I expect from that. I'm taking it more up to Germany, and so Saint Laurent from the Central Coast, that would be pretty fantastic, Chris. I mean, yeah, that would be really unique, right? Like, so that varietal done in a warmer place to get rid of some of that sinewy kind of astringent element that I've tasted before makes sense. That'd be great. I mean, that's a solid call, but I agree, like that would be probably more priced than this, and it would be a real left field flyer that Tony would have pulled a Saint Laurent and not pulled it from a more traditional place. That would be messing with us for sure. He's done so before. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna go Pinot. I'm going Pinot in Germany. I'm gonna stay there, and 2018 or 2019, so a newer vintage. Um, Despite that tawnying element around the rim, I think that's just maybe more 2018. 2 to 4 years old. So um, something kind of central Germany, Pinot Noir, 2 to 4 years old, more like 3 to 4 years old. I think that's where I'm going to go. Everybody else, where are you guys headed? Robert stuck in Germany, not France, possibly south from there, so heading to Italy or east and heading to Austria. And so I think most of us are in that camp. Let's see. Uh-oh. Right when you open it, you know. Big points for Olga. I think, did you say Bartolino? That's fantastic. Kudos to you, man. Olga, you did great. Bartolino, 2019, Blumorete. That's very cool. And the alcohol on this is 12.5. So, Chris, you were dead on. Very neat. Corvina, Rondinella, Molinara. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate that very much. Yeah, that's a really cool wine, isn't it? It's tasty. Presents like Pinot Noir, or at least for me it did. Really, really good. Good wine, but I'm also more really, really good, guys. We were in this realm and playing kind of well with a general area. So those who were on the Italian camp, you were right, especially those who were kind of pushing for more of a northern Italian play. Chris, you're 100% right. Tony's hitting an obscure spot. But Susan, you were thinking Valpolicella, and the varietals play that well as well. So this really Bartolino, fun wine. It's got lightness, but it has an intrigue to it, and it drinks extremely well. Be fun with that sort of cinnamon spice, and in the fall squashes, winter squashes that are coming on right now. And go with that in a whole host of different ways. This is a fun wine. It's a tasty wine. A wine that I think you want to drink, and certainly at the price point, it's great. So a couple of winners tonight. Olga is certainly the maximum winner with throwing out Bartolino before, and then quite a few folks who are pushing us into Italy, but pushing us northern in Italy, excuse me, which is great. And I drug us into Germany. So negative points here. But overall a plus point because I got a chance to try this. Very cool. Classico, so I imagine it's got a little more concentration as a result of that. But this, yeah, at 12.5%, it's really nice because you can go to town on that and drink a couple extra glasses and not feel the effect. Bartholomew Broadbent is one who always says when I see him, give me a wine that's 13% or less. Because when you drink something that's 14%, it's like drinking this whole bottle and then having 2 vodka tonic chasers. You drink this whole bottle and maybe someone looks at you cross. You drink this whole bottle and then have 2 vodka tonic chasers, and someone thinks you're an alcoholic. But that's the difference of having that extra degree of alcohol, and this doesn't. So it presents in a beautiful way where you can enjoy this midweek with a sort of squash-oriented meal, with a light meats meal, and not feel the effect as much, and still function for the rest of the week. So cheers to that, and cheers to all of you. Olga, a distant memory you had. So you were referencing a little bit of a memory in Verona 10 plus years ago. That's awesome. And that's taste memory, which we're developing here through this weekly experience. But you can also reference that. And I was sharing this with some others before, but you're not trying to nail the wine based on a previous experience. Maybe you've never had it. I've had 2 or 3 Bartolinos in my life. Not a lot. And I wish to have more. But you're not trying to nail that. You're trying to narrow the window of the world down and make an educated guess. And anybody who said Austria, anybody who said Germany, anybody who said coastal Oregon, anybody who said Italy, right? You were all in the realm, and you made a case for why, and we made a great estimation, and then it ends up being Bartolino, which a few of you were more close to. So cheers to that. Cheers to all of you again. I will see you back here next Thursday when we'll try whatever else Tony has up his sleeve for us to get into. Until then, have a great week. I'll see you then. Cheers.